Right, brilliant. Well, we'll make a start. Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to see you all. So obviously, this is a business meeting of the Primary Care Committee. It's held in public, so members of the public who want to join us are able to. And I think, to be honest, I think that has been one of the advantages of doing these meetings online. We've certainly had more engagement from members of the public since we've been online than we had previously. So that's been great. Obviously, the meeting is recorded and will be available publicly. It's the normal protocols. I'm not going to go through them all because you do all know them. And then let's have a look. We don't need to do introductions because I think everybody has met everybody. Is that the case? Yeah, everybody's nodding. Yeah, I think I'm familiar with everybody's name. So we have had a lot of apologies. So we've got David Gallagher, Mark Pickering, Janet Walker, Natasha Judge and Robert Upsall. And Jane's just given us some additional apologies there as well. Jane, do you want to do them for the record?
Yep, so additional apologies include Janice Foster and Lisa Jones from Public Health Strategic Manager from Middlesbrough, and Rebecca in Cleveland.
Brilliant. And Michelle will be joining us, but she might be joining us a bit late. So the meeting actually isn't quorate, but we decided to go ahead with it. And what we'll need to do is put forward our items for as recommendations for approval to Dave and Mark. That's the process, isn't it, Karen? Yeah. Yeah, so we are able to have discussions, but we'll need to get those decisions signed off for the decision items. And we just thought with the timing, it was best to proceed on that basis rather than rearrange the meeting. So with that, if I can go on to, is there any items of business, other business that I haven't been notified of that anybody wants to raise? No. Okay, smashing. And then in terms of declarations of interest, is there any additional declarations of interest that people would like to add? No. Okay, lovely. So the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 19th of April, are we happy to agree that they're a true record? Yep, lots of nods there. Lovely. There was nothing outstanding on the action log. So with that, we'll go into the first item for decision, which is on page 21. And that is sorry, it's not on page 21, it's on page 13, I think, is it? Is that right? Yeah, page 13, item 21. And that's the Woodside surgery. And that is Culvey.
Thank you, Chair. So on the 25th of May 2021, Woodside Surgery had an announced comprehensive inspection from CQC to follow up on the issues which were identified during their September 2020 inspection, where they were actually placed in special measures. During the May visit, they found that the practice had made improvements in all the key areas and moved them from the rating of overall inadequate to requires improvement. And they also decided that to lift the special measures that they'd actually placed. At this visit, they also identified that there was a breach of Regulation 13 of the Health and Social Care Act 2008. This committee on the 17th of August was presented with the paper which detailed the actions and the evidence required to remedy the breach notice, and the committee had approved to issue a breach notice. Both Tees Valley CCG and NHS England had met with the practice, discussed the breach and the evidence which was required, and to offer any support that the practice may wish. By the end of March, the practice had submitted the evidence, and since then, NHS England have been in contact with Woodside Surgery to seek further clarification and evidence. Both the NHS England Assistant Medical Director and Primary Care Manager reviewed the evidence which was submitted, and this is actually shown in Table 1 in the report, and they were satisfied with the evidence that was provided. The committee is asked to note the information in the report and consider the closure of the breach notice, which was issued on the 2nd of September 2021. and the committee is also asked to consider to include in the feedback given to the practice the suggestion which was made by the Assistant Medical Director that the fail-safe audit process could have been stronger. Thank you, Chair.
That's smashing, Colby. Thank you very much for that. Is there any additional comments or questions for Colby? I thought it looked pretty straightforward.
Yes.
I like the table.
Happy, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So can I move that we're happy to accept the recommendations, which is to close the breach notice and report back, as Colby said, in terms of making some recommendations about process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's smashing. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Colby. So the next item is item 22, and that's a CQC breach notice for Cotham Surgery and Prospect Surgery.
Okay.
You again, Colby, yeah?
No, thank you. So on the 23rd of June 2021, Prospect Surgery had a responsive focused inspection, which was following a specific incident. On the 9th of July last year, there was a further announced inspection that took place following the concerns of the last visit, which rated the practice inadequate overall. The committee had approved on the 27th of October the issuing of a breach notice in relation to regulations 12 and 17, which was sent to the practice on the 9th of November 2021. Sorry. And they were requested that the evidence was submitted by the end of February this year, which was extended to mid-March of this year. On the 22nd of March, CQC re-inspected the practice and they were rated good overall and were not found to be in breach of any of the regulations. Moving on to Cotham Surgery, on the 7th of September of last year, they had an announced inspection which rated the practice as requires improvement overall. This committee on the 22nd of December approved the issuing of the breach notice in accordance with the regulations 12 and 17. And the practice was sent the breach notice on the 22nd of December, allowing their time to submit the evidence by the end of March this year. On the 10th of March this year, CQC carried out an announced unrated inspection, and the report was published on the 13th of April. And this report identified that the surgery had breached Regulation 12. A breach notice in relation to this has not yet been issued due to the crossover of the open breach and the new breach. It is understood that the practice is at the moment due another comprehensive inspection, but we're not actually quite sure when that will be. Due to the volume of the information that was received and the clarification and further information that we needed from the practice, and to review this, we're asking the committee to consider the following two options. Would you like me to go through the options, Chair, or?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So option one is to present the Cotham Surgery and or the Prospect Surgery breach reports to the next committee for a decision once a date has been confirmed. And option two is to provide delegated responsibility to the Director of Commissioning Strategy and Delivery for Primary and Community Care to close the breach notices, provided that the practice has submitted all the relevant evidence and it is approved by NHS England. Also included within this option is the required delegated responsibility to consider whether to issue a breach to Cotham Surgery following the recent Focus CQC inspection. It's also worth that because of the other inspection that the CQC might do, that will also maybe have an impact on it. We're expecting, if depending on the outcome of this committee, that both reports should be completed by the end of this month. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for taking us through all of that, Colby. Any questions for Colby or any observations? No. Oh, Karen.
Yeah, it was just to say, Chair, I'm happy for option two to be progressed to delegate to myself, but what I will ask is through this this committee that those reports are expedited so that the closures where they are relevant can be undertaken as soon as possible, so that there's nothing hanging over the practices any longer than it has to be. So I'm happy to accept that delegation on the process, that that information is provided to us as committed by the end of this month, in order that can be closed in advance of the 4th of July, because I will not be around that for 2 weeks following. So it would be helpful to have those in advance of that to ensure the practice can be informed.
Brilliant. Yeah, happy with that, David?
Very happy to support the delegation. I think it's the sensible thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. So happy to go with option 2, and we'll make that recommendation to David and Mark. Okay, yeah. Right, lovely. Okay, thanks, Colby. So the next item is item 23, and this is the core I work with it. The core hours closure request. Sorry, that took some saying. And that's Emma that's going to take us through that. Over to you, Emma.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Oh.
The committee should be aware that
You're a bit quiet, Emma.
can you hear me?
Only just.
Oh, I had a problem with Zoom where I had to wave my hands before, and that helped my volume.
It does. It really helps.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I'll do this. Committee should be familiar with a standard operating procedure that we put through committee previously around temporary branch closures or temporary closures within core hours for practices. And that requests would come in through a standardised template. They would be assessed by the primary care team. A review of the information and a recommendation would be made by the primary care operational group for the delegated decision making that was granted to the director to make the approval or rejection of those requests, and that we would bring back those decisions to committee for ratification. There have been a number of temporary branch closures instigated over the last, I think, 2 weeks, and it happened unfortunately over a weekend, mainly to do with some water pipe issues that affected Victoria, Gladstone and Cohen Trory's practice in Victoria Medical Centre due to water pipe issues, and then another maintenance issue at Throston Medical Centre. Those applications were considered, and given the emergency arrangements that were affected, those applications were approved. All alternative arrangements were put in place, and there was assurance given that patients were communicated with appropriately, and that practices had enacted their business continuity plans to make sure that patients could be seen who had an appointment at an alternative premises. There's also been an application from Borough Road in Nunthorpe, who have had approval to relocate their branch site, and they need a 1-day closure, basically just to allow them to facilitate that movement to the new site. So that one has been approved as well. So those are the 4 branch closure requests to be ratified. And then the final one is a lunchtime closure request. Now we do get quite a few requests from practices to close their premises for a period of time over a lunchtime. We've had a request from Denmark Street in Darlington, and the original request was to close for an hour every lunchtime. For reasons they articulated quite coherently in their application around staffing pressures, that they're redesigning the way the practice operates to improve experience, the delivery of the practice, to protect and maintain the workforce. However, as the primary care operation group didn't feel that there were exceptional enough circumstances to warrant 5 days a week for that lunchtime closure, and given that no other practice in Darlington closes for 5 days per week, that we rejected that application. However, recognising the significant pressure that practices are ongoing, and Denmark in particular, and the mitigating actions that they're putting in to try and address some of those pressures, we recommended to support a closure for either 2 hours on 1 day or 1 hour on 2 days a week. The practice have confirmed that they will opt for the 2 hours once a week, and that will be on a Wednesday between 12 and 2, and that commenced yesterday, so it will be tomorrow is the first day, 12 till 2, patients will still be able to contact the practice. They'll still be able to ring through any absolutely clinically urgent needs. There'll be like on-call arrangements. So they've given, and they're obviously going to communicate that out. They have got the support of their patient participation group in applying to the CCG for that lunchtime closure. So it was just to make committee aware of those are the decisions and to seek ratification of those delegated decisions that have been made.
Brilliant, thanks. It did make sense, like you said, in terms of people being able to access the GP over their lunch hour. Having some availability does make sense. So I think that's quite a pragmatic approach. David, did you have a comment or a question there? No. Oh, sorry, Karen. Yep.
Yeah, Chair, it was just to reassure committee in terms of the assurances that have been provided, that the processes that previously were agreed by committee have been followed. The emergency closure and the arrangement in all actions and the communications with patients to ensure that patients were supported were in place. And also with the closure that we were informed of over a weekend period, although it was out of hours, I was contacted directly and did authorise that closure over the weekend and into the Monday, to ensure that the issues could be resolved and remedied. So it was to provide assurance to committee that the team have provided all of that assurance and reassurance to myself before any delegated decisions were taken.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Karen. Yeah, okay. Well, with that then, I'm happy to note the content of the paper and ratify the delegated decisions that have been made in accordance with the standing operating procedure. Right, so we're on to the next part of the agenda now, which is for discussion. So we've got Hannah and the primary care budgets.
Thank you, Chair. If the sound goes funny, let me know and I'll turn my camera off, and that should help. I'm having the same problems I think Emma is.
Sounds okay.
Right, so this is the, sounds all right. Oh, that's good. So we've brought to the meeting the final 21-22 full year financial position for delegated primary care. This is subject to audit. Audit are just working on this at the moment, so hopefully any day now we'll have a sign off from audit as well. But we don't think there should be any problems. So actually we finished the end of the year at over 2 million deficit, so 2.1 million, which is pretty much where we expected to be when we got the original allocations at the start of the year. We always knew we were going to have just over a 2 million funding gap. So we've held that position through the year. We've managed to, we did have quite a bit of prior year slippage, which has been to fund some pressures on things like enhanced services and QOF. We've put a bit more in there for prevalence. And also we had a few, the investment and impact as a PCM payment that we were short funded on nationally. And so we've sort of put some additional funding into that. So we've managed to cover all of that pretty much through prior year slippages. What else we've got on there? Around the R's, the additional roles reimbursement, we have finished the year basically on a break-even position with that. We spent quite a lot of time at the end of the year looking at who had got employed across all the PCNs, where we thought that was going to come in at, and I think realistically it will come in at about break-even. So that's what we went with from our
Oh, you're breaking up a bit now, Hannah. Oh, we've lost. Try that. No, we've completely lost you now, Hannah.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, lovely. No, sorry, Hannah. It's gone really funny now. Sounds like a piano keyboard. I'll name that tuning.
Always does this to me. So I think that's about it. So I don't know if anyone's got any.
Has anybody got
anything else off? I've got all your incoming off. I've got my outgoing off.
Oh, that sounds great now. We've got you back now. That sounds great. David,
Okay.
have you got any questions? Has anybody got any questions for Hannah? No. No, that's absolutely smashing, Hannah. Thanks for all of the reports that you've brought to the committee and keeping us up to date. I think it obviously it's at where it's at in terms of the budget position, and like you said, we've managed to hold that position that we thought we'd have at the beginning of the year. So I think that was to be expected. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, smashing. So with that, we'll move on to item number 25, and this is the Primary Care Network's end of year report, which was a cracking report. It was brilliant to read. So is that Karen going to take? No, it's Rebecca, isn't it? Rebecca's going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair. Great. So the report today has been shared with committee for information. I don't intend to go into it in detail, but I'll just give a brief summary. It is the second time that I've produced an end of year report for the PCNs, and really it's to highlight the contractual requirements that they delivered in 21-22. A bit of a look forward to 22-23, along with some of the things that the PCNs have been doing either independently or working with other system partners. So the process that I undertook was through an end of year reflection template, which each of the PCNs completed at the end of last year, which included things such as what's gone well for them, what challenges have they faced, what additional staff training was undertaken, what they were looking forward to in the new year, and also what support they've received from the CCG and anything else that they would like to see from us. I then collated that and combined that with the outputs of our regular PCM meetings and any other pilots and initiatives that we were aware of. And obviously the report can't cover every aspect of the development, but it does really provide a snapshot of all of the things that they've been doing. And I think it's really important to say, obviously it does celebrate their ongoing development despite the focus on the vaccine programme and just some of the fantastic things that they've achieved. So the report has already been shared with PCNs and also internally, but the plan would be to share that with wider system partners just as part of our ongoing close working, because obviously a lot of our partners have been instrumental in supporting that development as well. So very brief, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that. Karen?
Yeah, I think it's just helpful to just probably obviously not only celebrate the success of the PCNs, and I think sometimes obviously as we're in a public meeting, primary care networks, PCNs, it's the practices that are actually made up of the grouping of the primary care networks. So it's making sure that we also celebrate the success and the work that the practices have been undertaking through what has been a really difficult couple of years for them, and also to formally thank the practices, the primary care network clinical directors for that transformation work that still has continued whilst we were in the midst of a pandemic, but also to thank my team formally for the work that they've put in, not only to the report, but to the PCNs themselves and their development and the shared learning that's happened across the patch, and the peer support that they provide into other areas. That was to formally record that on record, this being our last primary care committee of the CCG. I thought it was really important. Thanks, Chair.
Brilliant. You've stolen me thunder there, Karen. I think if I just reiterate everything that Karen said there, I thought that was an incredible report. I think the way in which the whole system's responded to COVID, changed the way that they operate, delivers new services in challenging circumstances. I think what strikes me is everybody just gets stuck in and gets on with it. And it's always very patient focused. So it was a pleasure to read that report this morning when I went through it. I think there's just so much additionality, and I was going to ask about how you share this with other stakeholders, because I get that the whole system needs to look at it, but I think as well that piece of work is so valuable, I think, for other stakeholders, because I think it could provide a bit of inspiration in terms of how things can change quite a lot, and I think it's a really good model. So well done. It was excellent. I'm going to go to Jean and then I'm going to go to David. So over to you, Jean.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chair. So much of what I was going to say, perhaps not quite as eloquently as has been said. has now already been said, but I just wanted to put on record my thanks. So there's thanks as a colleague, and also thanks on behalf of the patients that we serve. I think that we've heard an awful lot, particularly latterly, nationally, regionally, and at times locally, about, and it's actually been all the negative stuff. I think this is, it's exemplary in the way that there's been that enormous amount of responsiveness to what was a very, sometimes the system, you could read the instructions on a night, and by the time you came back the next morning it changed, or you could start off in the morning and it changed by the time in the afternoon. So there was all that going on, but throughout that we the big system, but not actually me, primary care colleagues in whatever shape, size, flavour, whether it's been the primary care team, whether it's been the PCNs, whether it's been individuals in practices or whatever, they've continued to deliver to patients day in, day out. So that business as usual, whilst also continuing to think, how do we do this better? How do we serve our populations better? How do we transition in doing that? And also, let's not forget that the Tees Valley geography is a very challenging geography to work in. There is a tremendous amount of need, and this talks to how that is both taken on board, how colleagues flex to, in their sort of professional opinion, best meet that need for the optimum benefit of the population we serve. So just a very big thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jean. I'm sure that's really well received. David?
Yes, again, I think a very big thank you. I think it's a great achievement, particularly perhaps just to pick out in terms of the recruitment of further allied health professionals, community pharmacists and many others. I think that's really great. And also, as Caroline touched on, working with other professionals, there's reference about cooperation with the foundation trusts, including the Mental Health Trust, and lots of good work's been doing on that, single point of access, new models of care, etc. And that's all very encouraging indeed. And so some reference to cancer research and etc. So I think it is very encouraging, both the work that the primary care has been done in primary care itself, better cooperation, but the interaction with other health providers, and I think that it's just very encouraging. That's all. So big thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. Well done there, then, Rebecca. That's great. Excellent report. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. Right. So the next item is the digital update report. And I'm going to get your name right for the first time now, Graham, instead of calling you Earl. I've called you Earl for the last 2 years, haven't I? So over to you, Graham. I think this was, I really enjoyed reading this report as well, but I'll let you take us through it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There was another item in between mine. Have I missed that?
Sorry.
No. There is another item, but it's fine if you want to go
I wanted
first,
to bask in the glory of getting my name right. So
Sorry, what have I missed?
The PCN audit report, I think, was just before me.
Sorry, yes, I have. Oh, well, I tell you what, should we do yours first, Graham, and then we'll go back to that if that's okay.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
No
then,
problem. Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. This report is previously a bit like Becky had just gone through. We brought an update with regards to the work that the digital team, excuse me, has been doing with the practices, and so this report was just to talk through what had been achieved within 21-22. And what the plans were for 22-23. Unfortunately, I don't think it's quite as exciting as previous years, where we've been able to implement quite a few different digital solutions. But it was recognising a bit, as just been previously mentioned, you know, the support and the impact of coming out of the COVID pandemic, what that's meant with regards to what we've been able to achieve. So at the start of the year, the expectation was we would be supporting the practices as trying to hopefully come out the other end of the pandemic and look and learn from the new ways of working, from things that have been implemented to support access through a very challenging time. But unfortunately, the pandemic still took a little bit of a hit into each of the practices, being able to support them in being able to continue to work remotely, accessing limited numbers of laptops that we had available. We were also able to roll out things like what they call the use your own device when we didn't have enough laptops. So there was a lot of support that was a little bit reactive, which limited the opportunities of what we wanted to do and build on within the year. So some of the achievements possibly aren't quite as big as what's happened in previous years. But I think the main achievements, as we've mentioned in there, we went out and re-procured the online and video consultation tools that was available to practices that have been rolled out in previous years. We continue to develop the Great North Care Record, which is the shared care record across each of the partners, bringing primary care, secondary care, acute mental health trusts, bringing the information together and being able to add who was coming on board with regards to that. There was further equipment required, again, to support them in a reactive way, recognizing that we were using the likes of Teams a bit more for ways of practices for working. But previously, the equipment they had available, the likes of monitors to be able to have webcams built in and speakers, wasn't available. So we were able to access more of them. We were able to also support practices from a point of view with regards to telephony. Previously, telephony is a practice's responsibility, but it quickly became apparent, especially through the pandemic, how sort of fixed the telephones are, being a unit on the desk, and how we needed to be able to support practices in being a bit more resilient and being able to access solutions that means you could still access the same telephone system, possibly not being in the practice. And so we were able to support practices through that. We have also been supporting care homes with regards to the NHS mail rollout, and that became quite apparent as we were going through the pandemic. It highlighted a bit more sometimes from a digital, especially from a digital point of view, how disconnected care homes potentially are, and opening up the opportunity to access a secure email infrastructure, really supports how care homes can interact with not only primary care, but the whole system. And we also supported the rollout of the teledermatology solutions, which was, again, a little bit of a digital support to a pathway as to how within primary care they're able to take pictures of certain skin conditions that then are reported into secondary care, that then sometimes can negate the need to actually turn up to secondary care because advice can be given if the quality of the picture is so much better. So they were some of the highlights. I'll just go through a little bit of the detail of the highlights, and as mentioned in the executive summary, and we've said before, it's a small team, the digital team, and through some digital first funding from NHS England, we were able to get some extra capacity. So we had a new member of the team, Phoebe, join us, but again, it was a little bit limited as to, we were really wanting to support practices in optimizing the use of digital tools, but when they were under so much pressure and people still having to isolate and everything, it was more support. How do we help you keep your head above water and continue to provide access, and we can optimized, possibly when you're able to and when you're ready. So the extra capacity was helpful into the team. So with the online consultation system, we rolled that out through right at the very early starts of the pandemic, and we ensured that online consultations were available to every member of the public or every patient within a practice. But it was sort of pushed out at pace, and practices had learned as they started to use it. And so when the contract became for re-procurement, we wanted to support practices. We asked, would they want to, recognizing the challenges they were under, did they want to go out to a re-procurement of a new system, or would that be a step too far with the pressures they were under? But they did support testing the market to see what other solutions were available, recognizing some of the issues that they felt there was caused by online consultations. But this also opened the door to be able to add video consultations, to put it into one contract and actually create some efficiencies by not having to pay for two solutions. We could get the one under the same contract. So we asked practices what they were looking for from an online consultation system. We also took on board the patient feedback, which we got from the current system. So when somebody does an online consultation, the patients are asked for a survey as to how it went, what they liked, what they didn't like. And so we could take that on board as well when we were looking at what other systems could provide that. We linked in with the other CCGs across the Northeast because the contract we had for the online consultation was one contract. There was only one CCG didn't get involved in the re-procurement in total because their practice's wish was to extend the current contract with the current provider. They didn't want to have the change at that time. And so we went out with the other 7 CCGs with the requirements that had been provided from the practices to go and test the market. And on the table that's in there, it shows that we managed to get 6 providers respond, but ultimately the current provider, so eConsult, who was already in the practices, actually did come out on top. But it wasn't just you got the same system, you know, there was some additionality that was to come. There was the addition of the video consultations that was included in there, and there was also some demand management elements that were included in there, which again was something the practices had highlighted with regards as trying to be able to control a little bit how many come through and the appropriate use of the online consultations. So it was a challenging process and a timely process, and trying to get to Tees Valley, we've got 80 practices, so trying to collate 80 practices feedback and information, you know, can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, but I think we overcame that, and we were able to re-procure the system and also provide the video consultation package as well out there to practices. With regards to the Great North Care record, this is something we link in with the whole of the region with the development of the Great North Care record, and it's going from strength to strength to the point that in March 2022, there was 370,000 views of patients' records across the Northeast system, which is phenomenal and shows how it's been accessed by clinicians and care workers when dealing with patients and ensuring they have the most up-to-date information available across the system to support any decisions that are going to be made. The next step in to roll that out is to get local authorities on board. Sorry, the light's gone off. With feeding information, but also being able to view information within the system. And Hartlepool Borough Council have just updated their social care system, which is going to afford them the ability to get connected into the Great North Care record. The other T's, local authorities, are struggling a little bit from a point of view of what their social care system providers are wanting to charge for them to be able to integrate the system into their social care system. So there's a little bit of a challenge there to ensure that we can work with them in a way that's affordable, but also recognise that there's a return on that investment and for them to feel the benefit from that. So as I shared in the report, there is a plan on how that's going to be progressed across the year, but that is one challenge that we'll be continuing to work with. Just to speed things up a little bit, the rollout of equipment, again, I mentioned a bit around that was supporting practices in being able to use the tools and have the right equipment to be able to support them to work remotely and to utilise some of the digital tools that have been rolled out. The advanced telephony systems, this was a little bit around changing the systems to become more cloud-based. So it gave them a lot more resilience should they not be able to access the practice site. It also integrated in with their their clinical systems, so that when a phone call comes through, it can automatically bring up that patient's records because it recognises the number that comes through. So it offered efficiency as well as resilience. And unfortunately, as the report suggests, we only got 25 out of the 80 practices to be able to take this offer up. But ultimately, it came down to the contractual requirements for some of the practices that they were signed into telephony systems that meant, you know, that it wasn't financially viable to be able to take the shift. But we will take the learning from what we've done with the 25 practices, and any further opportunities to be able to support practices in getting those types of system, we will continue to do. I mentioned the digital support in the care homes. Like I say, the pandemic highlighted the disconnect. We've seen the NHS mail as being the first step to be getting the care homes to be part of the system, to have a secure way of being able to communicate digitally. We've been working with the older persons team, with Paula Swindle's team, to really look at what are the opportunities then once they've got NHS mail. You know, how can we share information from discharge, information coming from hospitals, and what are the pathways that can really support and bring the care homes into being part of the connected healthcare system. So there's a lot more work that's going on this year, working alongside the older persons team. And as I mentioned earlier, the last one was the teledermatology, supporting practices with some increased kit. And the support from the digital team came from how they could integrate that into their current clinical systems to make sure the photos that they take are available in the patient's record, and are able to be shared with secondary care. So the next steps as we come into 22-23, something that's been highlighted quite big is the impact that some of these digital tools are having on primary care, and how sometimes it feels like they're working for the digital tools rather than the digital tools working for them, because of the increased demand it's potentially bringing into the practice. And so we recognize the impact that this is having, and also sometimes it's about educating the patients into the appropriate use of the digital tools, or that form of access when it is most appropriate. So the work plan we've got for this year, and we've already had one workshop with the practices to acknowledge that we understand it is having an impact, and as much as we'd like you to use the digital solutions as often as possible as you can, we recognise we can't have it break the system as well, and to support them in making the most efficient use of the capacity that they have available. So we started the workshop to highlight, to understand that, and to see how we can start to change things. So as much as getting people to use the online consultations, you know, how can practice websites really help patients navigate the system using the digital side of that, but also recognizing that, as we've had raised previously before, that, you know, that it's never going to be a digital only system, because recognizing not everybody is included when we look at digital as a form of access. So the main plan for this year, and practices have really come forward. We've been out linking in with some of them as to how we can really start to bring these tools in to help them to create more capacity, but also to educate and provide information to patients about how and when the best times are to use the digital tools that are available. And I think that was it.
Not much there then, eh, Graham? That was brilliant. I really did enjoy reading that report, especially around the work that you're doing with the care homes. Like you said, pulling all of that in together absolutely makes sense. So has anybody got any questions or comments for Graham? Oh, I can see a hand up there. Hi, hello, welcome. Hi. Have we got you? I think you're on mute. Are you on mute?
Thanks, Chair.
Lovely.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Graham. It was like a really good presentation, and primary care was actually very supported during COVID pandemic, and they really found it really helpful, especially the webcam and the IT support. And just like a little query from some of our representative practices, they're quite keen to have some support with regards to continuing video consulting. So I wasn't sure if CCG already has any plans how to facilitate that, please.
Yeah, so when we re-procured the online consultation, that ensured that we had a solution that could be used for the video consultations. We also, as we mentioned previously, getting equipment out there like the monitors with the webcams on, and sometimes it wasn't a replacement of a monitor; it was an extra monitor so that you can see and have your consultation, but still have your clinical record on another screen available to be able to talk. So we're hoping we've been able to give enough infrastructure, but if they still feel that there's elements that are missing, that are reducing the opportunities that can be made, that's definitely something we want to understand from practices. So more than happy to take any feedback that you have, Girish, so that we can support practices to make the most out of the video consultations.
Feedback is generally quite positive. Practices are just wanting to know what's coming next. They're sort of keen to know if AccuRx or if eConsult will have a video option added to it, or just just so that they can plan a bit more in terms of moving forward. And they were also wondering whether we will have similar tools both for primary care and secondary care, because moving forward there's obviously plans for joint clinics with specialists and things like that. So PCN was wanting to have more directions from your team regarding that, please.
Yeah, no problem. So the video consultation are available now within eConsult with the package that we have from them. We had to move away from AccuRx video consultation just because of how the contract was re-procured. So that's available now, but it was highlighted in the workshop that sometimes some further training was required, and we're about to get 2 workshops that are about to be rolled out to practices from eConsult to go through some of the things that you thought were the basics that we thought were already out there that possibly aren't, because of the pressure that practices have been under and some of the changes. I take on board your point with regards to integrated ways of working with regards to secondary care, and also from a patient's point of view, being able to interact with the NHS, whether it's primary care, secondary care. If you're going to do a video consultation, hopefully it feels the same at each point. And so we do link in through, we have a digital work stream across the Tees Valley area where we try to work together and look at how we can come up with the solutions that, if we can't get the same solution, they work in the same way. So, their access from a patient's point of view is in one route from that point of view. But that's, it's definitely something we want to continue and encourage.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Graham. David, I can see your hand up.
Thanks, Graham. Excellent report. I was really encouraged that Hartlepool Council are getting involved with the Great North Care Record, because so many of these reports for child protection and safeguarding over the years have sort of highlighted that certain people have known some information and other people haven't known that information. Often health have known some things and social services haven't, or vice versa. So I think this could make a real difference to improve safeguarding. I was a little bit concerned to read the next sentences about the other boroughs sort of citing financial reasons. I just hope that that's not an excuse, people being overprotective about their own information, and just really an encouragement for moving forward, if necessary, to quote the safeguarding side is a really good reason why this should happen and could happen. So I think it will be great when that's fully developed. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, David. And I think your point is very well made with regards to local authorities only getting 1 out of the 5, feels that it's not quite right. And so we've looked at options. If the finance was the only bit, well, how can we make that work? And sometimes, unfortunately, it's been the social care system providers wanting to charge the same fee across each of the local authorities as if they were starting from scratch. And one of the good things is coming together as an ICS, we've been able to highlight, actually, well, you've done it in Sunderland, why can't you now do it in Stockton and the like? So I'm hoping that really comes. I don't think there's there's any holding the information. I'm hoping that's not the issue. I think it has been a pure financial issue, but like you say, I think getting Hartlepool on board and being able to highlight some of the benefits that it's brought by putting a bit of investment into to connecting into this way will hopefully drive the others on as well.
Thanks.
I think inevitably you always have a pioneer that's prepared to go first, and like you said, with the ICS coming together, hopefully that might unlock some of those issues quicker. Karen, I can see you've popped your hand up.
Yeah, just I'm just really conscious this is a meeting in public, and anybody that's not very digitally enabled like myself might have got a bit lost in terms of the conversations, and it was just really to provide some reassurance to committee and also from a public perspective. Digital transformation within primary care continues. Tools are in place to support that and to enable that as we move forward. Solutions for interoperability across organisations is happening and will take place. And the support will continue to both practices, but importantly to patients, where there's the use of digital tools and technology, and also to support those who may not be digitally enabled. And that work is being done very much in collaboration with our local authorities and partners. And I just felt it was necessary to reiterate that and reassure the committee and the public that that is in place. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Karen. That's smashing. Right. Okay. Well, we've had a good discussion about that. Lots of debate. So thank you very much for that, Graham. The report was for discussion, so we're happy to note that and note the work plan for 22-23. So we'll go back on the agenda now to item 26. Sorry about that, Rebecca. Got carried away there. So Rebecca's going to take us through the PCN development audit report.
Great, thank you. Okay, again, so the audit report has been shared with committee for information. And again, I won't go into detail, and obviously you have the papers been shared ahead of the meeting. So the audit was the first audit of PCN development work. And it was really suggested by Audit 1 in the summer of 2021 as an opportunity for the audit to be undertaken across the North East and also to facilitate some benchmarking across the CCGs and the work with PCNs. It was agreed that the audit wouldn't take place until Q4 of 21-22, and again that was to not distract, I guess, from the ongoing work and the efforts of the vaccine programme at the time. As the report sets out, we provided Audit 1 with a range of evidence of how we work with PCNs and some of the support tools we've put in place, and a meeting took place with Audit 1 in January 22 to discuss the evidence and also for the Audit 1 to seek further clarification. I think the audit report highlights the approaches taken by the CCG in relation to the work with the PCNs. It recognises the range of activities that we undertake and also the nature in which we work with our PCNs. And it also highlights how we approach the work on a high trust model, with us opting not to take a contract management approach, but really to support the PCNs to develop themselves, and reflecting our commitment to ensure the success of the PCN model. This in the audits, the opinion of the auditors, had allowed the CCG and the PCNs to progress faster than appears to have been the case in other CCG areas. So I suppose in summary, that's what the audit report brings forward, and I'm happy again to take any questions or comments on that.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that. Again, a great report. And I think it was good to see in terms of that handover to the ICS for them to be given the once over in that way by audit. So it was good to see. And I love the approach. As you've said, that high trust approach, I think, is getting the best out of the PCNs and the system. Is there any questions or any comments for Rebecca in terms of the audit report? No, are we okay? All right, smashing. Well, thank you for that. We'll note the report, and a great piece of work, Rebecca. So we're on to item 28 now, and we're into the items to note or any other business. So this is the Winter Access Fund, and it's an update on spend for information. Does anybody have any questions or want to ask anything in relation to that? I'll just whiz down to page 112. Let's have a look. Yeah.
Chair, I'll just pick up because it is for information, and committee will be aware of it because papers have been presented in relation to the national monies that were made available to support winter. Obviously in the paper in 4.5, it sets out the range of schemes that were implemented through the use of the Winter Access Fund monies that were made available to our area, and the additional capacity that was put in place to respond to access through the winter period. So it was really just to ensure from a committee's perspective that you were able to see those schemes, and we were able to complete that loop in terms of the information that we provided previously.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Karen. I think there was a right mixed bag of things as well, wasn't there, in terms of what was put in place, but it was good to see. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that. That was just items to note. So the next item to note is pharmacy applications, and again, that's just for information, and it is what it is, isn't it? I think. Any questions or any comments on that? No. Okay, thank you. So we haven't got any other business. In terms of questions from members of the public, we haven't got any members of the public, so no questions on this occasion. In terms of items for the risk register, I don't think there's anything that we need to particularly change in relation to the risk register. And items to report into the next governing body. I'm presuming that that'll fall into the ICS now. Yeah, is that right? So any carry forward will be into the new body rather than the CCG governing body. Yeah.
It will be, yes, Caroline. As the CCGs were member practices and they were led by general practices, the delegation of primary care was scrutinised in terms of decision making through a committee such as we are now. That will change under the new ICB governance and due to the legislative changes and the changes to the ICB. So there is no longer a requirement for the delegated functions. And as you know, that a number of the areas that we cover in terms of primary care committee are for information rather than decisions. The decisions will still continue and they'll be overseen by the ICB committee in the future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Karen. Well, since it is our last committee, I was saying I've just got my head around all the acronyms like the LIS, the PES, the QOFs. I'm fluent in them now, but it's been a real privilege and a real pleasure to work with you all, seeing how the system does come together in times of challenge. And I think that the culture and the values of the whole system really shine through. So it really has. Thank you so much for all of your hard work, and good luck for the next chapter. Karen, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it was just also to formally thank you, Caroline, as the chair of this committee, and our members of the committee, and both voting and representatives, for the support that you provided to the CCG and to the team, and it deserves a public thanks. You've been very supportive as a committee as we've moved forward with such items around primary care. So thank you ever so much.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Karen.